This is the new DJI Avata 360, a drone that can shoot 360-degree 8K 60 video. DJI calls it their flagship 360 drone, but after 2 months, 100 flights, I'm not so sure. I think this flagship drone could actually be a great first drone for beginners instead. Quick disclaimer before we start, DJI sent me this unit for the review, but DJI has not paid me any money. I also bought some accessories myself for this review, and I spent my own money travel to New Zealand's South Island so I can test this drone in many different locations. Just want to make sure everything is clear before we start. Avata 360 is DJI's first drone with a built-in 360 camera system, which is obviously the biggest highlight, but it's more than just that. Being part of Avata lineup, this is also a FPV drone. If you look at the design, it is very similar to the Avata 2, just slightly larger, and very different from a traditional drone. Here it is next to my Mini 4 Pro. You can immediately see the difference. Traditional drones like the Mini 4 Pro have longer foldable arms, which helps with portability and stability. The Avata 360 doesn't have foldable arms. The propellers sit much closer to the body. That's because FPV drones are designed to fly closer to the ground through tight gaps and in more dynamic environments. So the design prioritizes responsiveness and durability. And I felt that straight away the first time I tried it. The Avata 360 is much more responsive, accelerates quicker, and changes direction far more easier than my Mini 4 Pro. The body is mostly plastic like most DJI drones, but it has integrated propeller guards, which is great, especially for beginners. Because of the way how people fly FPV drones crash more often, or sometimes maybe just gets a bit too close to tree branches. Without the propeller guard, you would destroy the propeller straight away. So far, I've already crashed Avata 360 a few times into trees and the ground, and it was completely fine. Nothing was broken at all. Another great thing about the propeller guard is that the drone is quite safe even if you get close to it or flying indoor. When I was testing the Avata 360 with my kids, we even tried to get the drone to chase each other. This is something I would never do with a drone that doesn't have propeller guard. Okay, now let's talk about the 360 camera system. At the front, you have 2 cameras, one facing up and one facing down. Together, they capture a full 360-degree view, and the drone itself becomes invisible in the final image. But with one camera facing downward, it would normally be easy to damage it when landing. So DJI came up with a pretty clever solution. The camera module rotates 90 degrees automatically when landing. So the lenses face forward and backward instead. And there are some little rubber feet at the bottom that protects the camera and the drone even when you are landing on uneven surfaces. This rotating design also enables single camera mode, where one forward-facing camera is used to capture standard video. In this mode, the footage is already flattened, more like a traditional FPV drone. So you have 2 different ways to record your video. Each camera uses a 1-inch equivalent sensor with an f1.9 lens, which I believe is the same system as the Osmo 360. Interestingly, Avata 360 can shoot 8K at 60 frames per second, while the Osmo 360 is limited to 50 frames per second. So it seems DJI has managed to squeeze a bit more performance out of it. In real-world use, the camera handles high contrast scenes very well. The standard color profile looks a bit too saturated for me, so I prefer shooting in 10-bit log profile, D-Log-M instead. Grading the D-Log-M picture profile is very easy. On sunny days, I quite often would slightly underexpose by around 0.3 to 0.7 EV. That helps preserve even more highlight detail while still maintaining very good shadow information. Lens flare control is decent, but since both lenses are exposed, it's a good idea to wipe them before takeoff, as lens flare is often caused by the dirty lens. My only real complaint in terms of image quality is that if you use auto white balance and fly the drone very close to grass area, the white balance may suddenly drift quite a bit. To avoid that, I suggest shoot in manual white balance. If you have watched my Osmo 360 review, you will remember I mentioned one of the biggest weaknesses of the Osmo 360 was that you cannot replace the camera lens yourself if you damage it. With FPV drone flying and two exposed lenses at the front, the chance of scratching them is even higher. Fortunately, this time the Avata 360 has user-replaceable camera lens. You have to buy it yourself, but the price is very reasonable. Now, one of the biggest challenges for any 360 camera is stitching. And it's even harder on a drone because the cameras are further apart and positioned top and bottom, so the stitching line runs horizontally through the center of the frame, making any stitching artifacts more noticeable. But overall, DJI has done a very good job. Most of the time, stitching looks clean, and stitching issues only show up when you are very close to a subject. You might notice more stitching artifacts in the live preview when you are flying, but once you render the footage using DJI Studio or the DJI Fly app, the final result is much cleaner. And if you still see any stitching artifact in your video, DJI Studio also gives you different stitching options to optimize the results. By the way, if you use DJI Studio, by default, footage is stabilized in follow mode with rock steady stabilization, giving you a very smooth gimbal-like look. But if you want a more dynamic FPV style video, you can switch to FPV mode, which adds FPV style tilt when the drone is turning. This makes the video looks more dynamic. If you like to use ND filters at launch, there are no ND filters available, but DJI told me they are coming in the future. I've tried to use the ND filters for my Osmo 360, but they don't really fit on the Avata 360. For photos, you can shoot 120 megapixel 360-degree photo in both JPEG and DNG RAW format. JPEG files are already stitched and easy to use. DNG file give you the original fisheye images from each lens, so you will need to handle stitching and processing yourself. In single camera mode, you can shoot video in 4K resolution up to 60 frames per second. If you want 120 frames per second, you'll need to drop to 2.7K, which is a bit disappointing. That said, in real-world use, 2.7K still looks quite decent, but having 4K 120 would definitely be nice. Storage-wise, you get a micro SD slot plus around 42 GB of internal storage, which has saved me a few times when I travel all the way to the destination and then realize I forgot to bring my memory card. At the front, there is a LiDAR sensor, and combine that with the 360 camera system, the drone has full omnidirectional obstacle avoidance. And this is a big deal because most FPV drones don't have any obstacle detection at all. This makes the Avata 360 much more beginner-friendly, especially for FPV style flying. In my experience, optical avoidance works well, but is tuned more for safety. The drone will slow down quite aggressively near objects or when you are flying just a meter or two above ground. If you want more freedom, you can disable obstacle avoidance, and like most DJI drones, it's also disabled when you're flying in sports mode. If you're shooting video in single camera mode, only forward obstacle detection is available. The Avata 360 uses DJI's 04 Plus transmission system with a rated transmission range of up to 20 km. In reality, you run out of battery before you can fly even half that range. But what I can say is that the signal is very stable. The only time I lost signal was when the drone went behind a small mountain which completely blocked the signal. Otherwise, the transmission has been very reliable even when the drone is behind trees or buildings. And if you do manage to lose connection completely, the drone will automatically return to home. So I know some of you may ask, why a drone with a 360 camera? Are there any real advantages over a traditional drone, or is it just purely marketing? Well, there are a few key advantages. First, when you are flying a traditional drone, you are usually controlling both the drone's position and the camera angle at the same time. Getting both right is what creates a good shot. For photos, that's not too bad as you can do it slowly. But for video, especially when tracking moving subjects, it can quickly become challenging, even for experienced drone pilots. But with a drone that has a 360 camera, you can mostly focus on positioning the drone. Since the camera captures everything around it, you don't have to worry as much about framing in the moment. You can adjust the camera angle later in post, which makes flying simpler and more forgiving, especially for beginners. The second advantage is flexibility in editing. Because the entire 360 scene is recorded, you can experiment with different compositions after the flight, or even create multiple versions from the same footage. You can also animate camera movements like tilt, pan, or changes in field of view. This also makes effects like rolls much easier. Instead of physically rolling the drone, you can simulate it by rotating the virtual camera in post. It's a simple way to create more dynamic FPV-style shots without needing advanced flying skills. Another benefit is aspect ratio flexibility. If you are a content creator, quite often you have to create video in both horizontal and vertical format. So normally you have to decide whether to shoot horizontal or vertical before you take off. But with a 360 camera, you can choose that when you are editing the video without affecting the field of view. Finally, a 360 camera makes taking panoramic photos much easier. You can capture the entire scene in a single shot instead of having to shoot multiple images and then stitching them together with a traditional drone, which sometimes can be very challenging if your scene is keep on changing. Now, let's talk about the flying experience with the Avata 360. How easy is it to fly, and what are the good and bad things? First of all, one of the great things about the Avata 360 is that there are multiple ways you can control it. You can control it using the DJI RC2, RCN3, or RCN2 controllers. These are the standard DJI drone controllers. If you have flown a DJI drone in the last few years, you have used one of them. I believe this is the easiest way to fly the Avata 360. But to prove if it's really true or not, I gave the RC2 and the Avata 360 to my son and my daughter, who have never flown a drone before, and they figured out the basic controls almost immediately. And the nice thing is, you also have a big touch screen to change settings or use smart features like intelligent tracking easily. One of the first things I tried was to see if I can use RC2's touchscreen to freely adjust the camera angle like the Osmo 360. Unfortunately, the only thing I can do right now is to zoom in or zoom out, so hopefully this is something DJI can implement in the future by firmware update. Speaking of intelligent tracking, I found this feature has improved a lot since last time I used it. I tested by having the drone follow me when I was walking and running in open space, and it handled that very well. That was not really surprising, but even when I moved into areas with trees, it still managed to follow me quite reliably. Not perfect, but definitely better than I expected. And it's also not limited to people. You can use it to track, orbit around, or follow other objects. Or even cars and other moving subjects, as long as they are not moving at a faster speed than the drone can reach. Speaking of speed, I was getting around 45 km per hour when flying in normal mode, and over 60 km per hour in sports mode. The top speed isn't too different from my Mini 4 Pro, but the feeling is very different. The Mini 4 Pro feels more like driving a family car. It's smooth and stable, but not really that exciting. The Avata 360 feels more like a go-kart. It's much more responsive with quicker acceleration and sharper turns. I've had the Avata 360 for about 2 months, but I've already did more than 100 flights, which is far more than my Mini 4 Pro that I had for over 2 years. The reason is, it's just really fun to fly Avata 360. Even during a short lunch break, I often find myself heading to a nearby park for a quick flight. But if you want even more fun, you can pair it with the DJI goggles, either the goggles 3 or N3, and the motion-free controller. This gives you a completely different flying experience compared to the RC2 style controller. Flying with the motion-free controller feels a bit like playing a video game. You point to steer and use the trigger to control speed. Combined with the goggles, it becomes much more immersive, since your vision is fully focused on the drone's live feed. I had never flown an FPV drone before, and this was also my first time using the DJI goggles and the motion-free controller. At first, it felt a bit scary, but after a few practice runs in beginner mode, it becomes much easier to control. Compared to the RC2, I found that I had a much better sense of distance and spatial awareness, especially when flying through tighter spaces. After just a few days, I was already flying in ways that I could not achieve with the RC2. It's definitely more fun, but at the same time, the chance of crashing increases because you naturally start pushing the drone harder. I think one of the reasons why many people interested in flying FPV drone is that they saw people doing all those awesome tricks, but while they look awesome, it's actually very hard to do. So the Avata 360 has the easy acro mode, which once enabled, you only need to push the joystick and it will do those tricks for you. This is a super easy way for you to do those FPV tricks before you manage to do it manually yourself. One very cool feature is head tracking. Once you enable it, you can look around to change the camera view while flying. When the drone is flying high in the air, turning your head to look around feels surprisingly natural. Probably the closest thing to actually being able to fly yourself. When head tracking is enabled, there's a pointer that shows the direction you are flying. If you turn your head too far and lose sight of the forward view, a small window pops up to show the front view, which helps prevent accidental crashes. Head tracking can also be used to set the camera angle more intuitively. Just turn your head and look at your subject, and the camera follows. When you import the footage into DJI Studio, you will see the same camera angle you had while flying. That said, I wouldn't recommend enabling head tracking the first time you fly with the goggle. It's better to get comfortable with the goggles and the basic controls first, as it can still affect your sense of direction. If you want to push things further and get a more traditional FPV experience, you can use the DJI FPV remote controller 3 instead of the motion free controller. This gives you more precise control. Manual mode is not supported at the moment. We'll have to wait and see whether it will be supported in the future. Using the FPV controller is a bit harder than the motion controller, but once you mastered it, you'll be rewarded with more precise control. If you are a complete beginner, starting with the RC2 is the easiest option. The DJI goggles with the motion-free controller can be a good next step. Of course, this is just my suggestion for easiest learning curve. If you are more interested in FPV experience, you could just start with the goggles and motion-free controller. By the way, when using the goggles, you can share the live view to a phone through the DJI Fly app or even to another pair of DJI goggles. This is very useful for letting others watch in real time or helping a spotter keep track of the drone. In terms of battery life, I get around 15 to 18 minutes per flight when recording 8K 360 video. And I typically land with about 10 to 20% battery remaining. I did recommend getting the Fly More combo with 3 batteries and a charger because you'll probably want to keep flying after the first battery. So at the beginning, I mentioned that I think this flagship drone is actually very suitable for beginners and it could be a great first drone. Why? I say that not because I think the hardware is beginner level, because that's definitely not the case. When people first get into drones, they often don't really know what they want. There are traditional camera drones and FPV drones. Both are great, but for very different reasons. And until you try them, it's hard to know which style suits you more. Even for myself, I have been wanting to try FPV drone for a long time, but just never able to convince myself to buy a FPV drone because I don't know if it really suits me. With the Avata 360, you don't really have to choose. You can fly it like a traditional drone using a standard controller with all the usual DJI safety features, making it easy to fly and relatively hard to crash. And if you do crash, the built-in propeller guards help. Or you can switch to goggles and the motion controller for a much more immersive FPV style experience. Very different way of flying and totally different flying experience. Once you are confident, you can even move to the FPV controller for more precise control. This flexibility makes the Avata 360 one of the most versatile drones available, and that is really great for beginners who don't really know what they want. And the second reason is the 360 camera allows you to more focus on the flying itself as you have the flexibility to adjust the camera angle when you are editing. And the third reason is cost. Beginners usually don't want to spend too much in case they don't enjoy the hobby. But on the other hand, if you buy something too basic, you may end up wanting to upgrade very quickly, which ends up costing more in the long run. The Avata 360 is actually very reasonably priced for what it offers. The standard kit starts at $719 US, including the RC2 controller. This is a price that a lot of beginners can afford. Especially the resale value for DJI drones is also better than any other brands as well, in case you find this is not really a hobby you enjoy. And if you already have a compatible controller, the drone alone is $479 US, which is really quite cheap, even if you compare to a normal 360 camera. For what it offers, DJI's price is really quite aggressive. But not only the price is cheap, the 1-inch sensor delivers great image quality. It is a drone that you can keep using for a long time before feeling the need to upgrade. And the last reason is the DJI ecosystem. DJI does a great job building compatibility across its products. The controllers and the goggles work with multiple current and likely future drones. So if you upgrade later, Whether to something bigger like a Mavic or smaller like a Neo, you can often reuse your existing gear. That gives you more flexibility and save money in long run. So that's why I think the Avata 360 is a great first drone. It's easy to start with, very versatile, reasonably priced, and gives you room to grow. When you do upgrade, it's more affordable because you're already in the DJI ecosystem. Now, like any product, there are always trade-offs. There's no such thing as a product with zero compromises. It's about how well these compromises are managed. So while the Avata 360 is impressive and I really like it myself, here are a few things that you also need to consider if you're interested in buying the Avata 360. The first is image quality when cropping. While the 360 camera can capture 8K video and high-resolution photos, you usually need to crop and reframe the footage. With wider angle, the quality looks great, but if you zoom in too much, you start to lose details. I compared the Avata 360 side by side with my Mini 4 Pro at a similar framing. The difference becomes noticeable. That's just the nature of 360 cameras. You gain flexibility, but lose some quality when cropping heavily. So if you love ultra wide-angle shots, then the Avata 360 is great. But if you like to capture a tighter field of view, a drone from the DJI's Mini series would probably be more suitable for you. The second is workflow. With a traditional drone, you can use the video footage or the photo straight away. With 360 video or photo, you will usually need to process it first using DJI's software, setting keyframes, adjusting camera angles, and exporting the final video. DJI has provided tools to help, like intelligent tracking, and you can even adjust zoom on the controller during flight, which carries over into the editing software. But even with these features, it still takes time, and having a reasonably powerful computer helps a lot. That's just part of working with 360 footage. I would also like to see more direct control over camera angles when flying in the future, which could make the process more intuitive and reduce the need for editing. The third compromise is weight. The Avata 360 packs quite a lot of hardware, including a pair of cameras with 1-inch sensor and strong motors, while still delivering around 15 to 20 minutes of flight time. So it's not a lightweight toy drone. From my measurements, the Avata 360 is about 320 grams without the battery and around 467 grams with the battery. In New Zealand, that doesn't really matter, but in some countries, being over 250 grams comes with additional regulations. And finally, noise. Recent DJI drones are very quiet, the Mini series especially. The Avata 360 isn't overly loud and is quieter than most FPV drones, but is still noticeably louder than a typical camera drone.
Takeoff. Home point updated. Takeoff. Home point updated.
So depending on where you fly, it may attract more unwanted attention. So that's my overall take on the Avata 360. I'm really curious what you think about this kind of hybrid drone. Does the 360 camera actually make sense to you? Or would you still prefer a traditional drone or a pure FPV setup? Let me know in the comments. And if you have already tried flying a 360 drone, I'd love to hear about your experience as well.